All right. Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you all to our first Facebook Live show. Um, my name is Mr. Rodriguez. I'm the program director for the Pharmacy Technology program that we have to offer at Del Mar College on the West Campus. And I'd like to talk about a little bit about the Pharmacy Tech program for those of you who might be interested in pursuing a career as a pharmacy technician. Pharmacy technicians, let me give you some background on that. Pharmacy technician, what they do is they pretty much assist the pharmacist in filling different prescriptions from, your patients that if you're working like a retail pharmacy, like a Walgreens or CVS, HB, those types of pharmacies, your patients will come in, bring in the prescription, and the first person that they tend to usually meet is the pharmacy tech. But if you're more interested in like a institutional type setting for pharmacy tech, um, abilities are kind of similar, but there are added responsibilities in the hospital setting or any other type of institutional type setting where the technician generally doesn't have the face-to-face contact with the patient, and so the technician will be um, filling those prescriptions as they come into the pharmacy. And the major difference between the hospital or the retail pharmacy is that you have to uh, feel like IV prescriptions, right? In the hospital, a lot of patients are on IV type medications, and so that's the major difference between the retail and the hospital type setting. Um, as the technician is filling those prescriptions, sometimes you may do like a manual pill counting, um, where the technician will have to manually, pour out the pills onto a little tray and count those pills manually because some of the medications are not dispensed in what's called a pill dispenser. So they would have to manually count out the prescriptions and then fill those out. Sometimes, even in the retail pharmacy setting, a lot of times the technician will get like an ointment that they would have to make or a cream, and they would have to mix the or measure out the appropriate amounts that that the doctor has required, for that particular prescription. And so they would measure out, and then they would mix the cream or the ointment with the medication, and then they would package that into a little tube or different types of packagings. Um, and once that happens, then what they're going to do is then attach a label to to either the tube or to like a little container that they can put the ointment in. So depending on how the pharmacist wants the ointment or cream filled or packaged, that's how the technician will do that. So that would be one of the other daily tasks that a technician will do. Sometimes it's done also in the hospital setting. We'll have to mix up different ointments and creams simply because the manufacturer, the company that makes the medications, they didn't make that particular one. Maybe the doctor ordered something special with different ingredients that doesn't come from one of those big pharmaceutical companies. So we'll have to manually do that. Another thing that a technician may encounter in hospital pharmacy is you may have to, you know, check crash carts. What a crash cart is a cart that has like emergency medications in the hospital settings. Um, so what a technician does is go through the different drawers and check to see if the medications are, you know, in the appropriate areas of the trays or the drawers. Make sure everything is not, you know, not expired. They go through each one. They follow a list if they have to. Um, and these are things that are done on a daily basis. Um, every time there's, you know, a patient that may be coding in a hospital setting, you know, where the patient may, you know, have some, you know, some serious adverse event happening, then on the nursing floor, the nurses will grab one of these carts and they will open it up and get those emergency medications out of the carts, and that's what they will use on the patient. And so what the technician will do when we get those used carts back from the nursing floor, um, the technician will go through that cart and make sure, you know, all the medications are in there. Um, one of the big things that technicians do in hospital pharmacy is preparing IV medications. So they would have to know how to gown up. Um, they would have to know how to put on their their what's called the PPE, personal protective equipment, where you have to learn how the appropriate order in which to put your PPE on, your the gloves, the shoe covers, your gown, your hairnet, uh, and the your gloves and your hairnet, even sometimes goggles if we're working with particular medications that may be hazardous if they splash into your eyes. So sometimes you'll have to wear goggles. But so what the technician will do, what we'll do here is teach the student how to, you know, put on the PPE in the appropriate fashion, right? Including hand washing. And then they're able to prepare the IV medication. And so what the student is doing is they would be preparing the IV medication or IV bag for that patient. And sometimes you may have to do like several IVs at once. And so we'll teach you how to, you know, do that in what's called an aseptic technique, using aseptic technique. Um, and because that's quite important because we don't want to introduce any type of, you know, any type of bacteria or other microorganisms into our IV products. Um, we need to have those products very sterile. They have to be very sterile for the patient. And so when the we would teach the aseptic technique to the students, and they will learn that in our IV hood on how to use the IV hood. The IV hood is the the long, if you see in the video, the long white box looking thing, and that what's the air that's in that IV hood or laminar airflow hood is sterile air, and so that is free of microorganisms or bacteria or viruses, and that um, will allow us to, you know, produce those sterile IV products. Um, and then another aspect of hospital pharmacy, um, the technician, we did uh, purchase a very nice, what's called a TPN machine, which means that this machine will help us, the technician, make a sterile IV nutrition bag. Sometimes there are patients who come in, maybe they're involved in a very serious, motor vehicle accident or something, and the technician or the doctor has ordered a nutrition bag for that patient because they can't eat anything, by mouth. So they have to get their nutrition through an IV route. And so the technician will, input that order from the doctor, and then they will set up the machine using aseptic technique as well. So everything has to be made aseptically without introducing any type of microorganisms or anything that can cause, infection. And they will operate that machine, and then the machine will fill up a bag with different fluids and liquids and things that will provide the nutrition that is required for that patient, as instructed by the physician. So these are some of the things that we will teach you when you go through our program, both sides, retail side and the institutional side, and you will get the opportunity to actually, when you do your internship, you'll get the opportunity to work in both type settings, uh, so that you will get the basic knowledge and the basic experience on working in both settings, in retail versus hospital environment. So our goal is to provide the tech, um, with the information that will allow them to be in compliance with certain standards for the pharmacy technician certification board. And once you successfully go through our program, then you would be able to take the certification test, which is offered by the pharmacy technician, let's call it the Pharmacy Technician Certification Board, PTCB. You would take that at the end of the program and get certified as a pharmacy technician. So we do offer a couple of routes that you can take um, through our program here. We do offer a certificate degree, which you know allows you to take the same pharmacy technician courses as the associate's degree. The only difference is the prerequisites. For the certificates, you would only need to take the English 1301, which is the college level Composition 1 English, and Math 1314, which is your college level algebra class. That would be the difference. If you do want to take the associate's route, we do require one added prerequisite besides the English, the math, and the other one would be the integrated software application, which is a basic computer class, because our technicians, or the technicians that work in pharmacies, do work with computers every day. They have to enter in the prescriptions in a computer system. So that basic software applications computer course will help you with that. So and then for the associates, there are a couple of extra courses that we would have to take. Some elective courses, like an ethics course, intro to speech, so speech class, your general psychology course, and then a basic chemistry course. So you would end up with your 60 credits for the associate's degree on that, versus like 51 credits for the certificate degree. So our program, we do teach you different things for you to be able to work in either setting. One of the main things is that pharmacy math. We will teach you how to do those important calculations, when you're, especially if you're making, your IV products. They do require a little bit of math on calculating the appropriate doses so that we can make those IV products. Um, um, and then we have other courses like law, the pharmacy law. You'll need to learn a little bit about pharmacy law and especially with HIPAA requirements and all those things. And then the we'll teach you drug names, we'll teach you the drug interactions, side effects, and things like that is required, especially when you're going to take that pharmacy technician certification test. Those are some questions that will come up on that test. Some basic questions like some drug names, some indications, um, math, of course, math, some questions in law, some questions on retail operations, some questions about hospital institutional type operations, things like that. So you will get a good wealth of information in order to be able to, work as a pharmacy technician in either setting. Now, there are a lot of students that who come through our program that use this knowledge as a stepping stone to go into the pharmacy school to become a pharmacist. And I think it's a really good idea. It's really great that they get this, basic knowledge. It makes them a little bit more competitive in going into pharmacy school. If they do the associate's degree, they have that degree um, that will stand out a little more than someone who just goes directly into pharmacy school. So you do get a lot of benefits going through our program, becoming a pharmacy technician, and if you have that aspiration of furthering your education into pharmacy school, I believe you will be a little bit, more advanced than someone who just goes directly into pharmacy school. So um, I think that's pretty much all I had to say about our program. You can definitely, contact us at 698-2823 or 698-2820. We're located on the West Campus over on Old Brownsville Road. And if you ever get a chance, even if you're maybe slightly interested, if you ever get a chance and wanted to see, what our lab actually looks like, it's really neat. Come by, um, just call us ahead of time that we can show you around. And if you have any further questions, we can definitely help you. Thank you for attending the Facebook, and hopefully we'll see you again next time.